If you've been watching this channel lately, you know I'm all about what the Wisconsin Badgers are doing, especially on offense and especially at the wide receiver position. All these moves, is it enough to vault the Wisconsin Badgers up to the top wide receiving core in the Big Ten Conference? Let's dive in. But before we do, if you haven't already, great time to subscribe to the channel. Big Ten football videos all offseason long. Always smash that like button to spread the word of Big Ten Ted to the masses. I'm going to answer my question right out the gate. And the answer is no. They will not have the top wide receiving core in the Big Ten in 2023. Because that award will go to the Ohio State Buckeyes. As that award has gone to Ohio State for the last 7, 8, 9 years, they have been a wide receiver factory. You want to be a wide receiver? You go to Ohio State. It seems that way. They churn out first-round draft picks and good NFL players. And when you look at what Ohio State has coming back, this year is going to be no exception. You look at Emeka Egbuka, you look at Julian Fleming, who are big parts of that passing game this year at Ohio State. And then you look at the future. The future is bright at Ohio State, and there's going to be 3 freshmen. Some of them might make an impact even this year in 2023. You look at Brandon Inniss, you look at Carnell Tate, you look at Noah Rogers, all very talented wide receivers in this year's recruiting class. Oh, and then you got a guy that just might be the best wide receiver on planet Earth in 2 or 3 years, and that's Marvin Harrison Jr. So Wisconsin, although they're good, and although they've made some big-time moves to bolster their offense, they ain't going to be on that level as it pertains to the wide receivers. But I firmly believe they're going to slot in at number 2. Like when you look at what Wisconsin has coming in this season, we'll get to the guys that they brought in via the transfer portal in just a minute, but I believe with Tanner Mordecai coming in at quarterback and Phil Longo's offensive system, the guys that they have returning, I believe would have been enough to bolster this team offensively. Like you look at Chemray Dike, the leading receiver for the Badgers last season, 689 yards and 6 touchdowns. He was the leading wide receiver for Wisconsin. You look at Skylar Bell, 444 yards and 5 touchdowns last season. Even Keontez Lewis was good as the number 3 wide receiver. Like you go from a system, right, with Bobby Ingram and Paul Chris and then Graham Mertz as your quarterback, and then you get a guy like Tanner Mordecai as your new quarterback, your transfer quarterback, and then you bring in a guy like Phil Longo as your offensive coordinator. Those guys alone that were coming back were going to take big jumps. Now you go into the guys that they brought in via the transfer portal, and eyebrows raised. Let's start first with C.J. Williams, a transfer from USC. This guy was a top 75 player in the country in the 2022 recruiting class, the high school recruiting class. 4-star guy, go up and get the football, 6'2", 190. It was a loaded wide receiver room at USC, obviously, because of all the transfer portal stuff that Lincoln Riley was doing in his very first year in Southern California. So CJ was kind of pushed down the depth chart quite a bit. This is a big get. Now, this is all about potential right here with C.J. Williams. You look at him on film, and he pops off the film, right? He went to he went to Mater Day. We know all about that and how good that C.J. Williams could be. We just haven't seen it on the college football field yet. But I believe he's going to be one of the top wide receivers on this Wisconsin team. And then you look at a proven commodity on the football field, and that's Bryson Green, the transfer from Oklahoma State. Last season, 584 yards and 5 touchdowns. He was the second leading OSU receiver in terms of yards, but he led the team in touchdown catches last year for Oklahoma State. He was a big part to that Oklahoma State passing game last season. Look, this is a guy that's going to be able to fit in very nicely. I think he's got a little bit more speed than maybe any other wide receivers on this Wisconsin team. So you put it all together. C.J. Williams, Bryson Green, Chemray Dike, Skylar Bell, Keontez Lewis, and don't forget about guys like Will Pauling and Quincy Burrows, a couple of class of 2022 guys that went to Cincinnati that have been brought over by Luke Fickell to Wisconsin. It's a very deep wide receiving core. It's a very good wide receiving core. And the reason why I think they're number 2, and I'll get to this as I compare them to other wide receiving cores throughout the Big Ten here as this video goes on, it's because of the system. It's because of Tanner Mordecai at quarterback, right? What he's been able to do the last 2 years at SMU, that's a big part of it. Him coming in. And then Phil Longo and the system that he's bringing in. They are going to see a lot more passes thrown, and that means they're going to have a lot more production. Now, why are they number 2? Why do I slot them so high as compared to other Big Ten football programs? In order to find that out, you got to compare them to other wide receiving corps in the Big Ten Conference, and that's exactly what is going to happen right here and right now. First, I'm going to compare them to Penn State as I kind of go through some of the best other wide receiving corps in the Big Ten Conference. Like you look at Keandre Lambert-Smith, Harrison Wallace. I think Keandre Lambert-Smith is going to stand out. Okay, and then you look at Dante Cephas and Malik McClain, the transfer from Florida State. They are going to have good wide receivers. There's going to be a lot of talent at Penn State. But keep in mind, you got a freshman quarterback. I don't care how good he is. You still got a freshman quarterback, and you got the second best running back tandem in the country in Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. This is a team that's going to want to run the football, take a little bit of pressure off of Drew Eller. Being said that, I think Wisconsin's going to have more production because I just don't think Penn State's going to need to throw the ball all that much to their wide receivers. Let's talk about Minnesota. Minnesota's in an interesting spot right now because you got Chris Altman-Bell, who could be one of the top 4 or 5 wide receivers in the Big Ten if he stays healthy all season long. Daniel Jackson did a great job stepping up in his absence when he was injured. But the big thing for Minnesota is the transfers. You look at Corey Crooms, over 1,500 yards, 11 touchdowns the last 2 seasons at Western Michigan. And then Elijah Spencer, last season nearly 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns at Charlotte last season. It's the transfers that are really going to make this offense go. And you don't have the best running back in Minnesota history in Muhammad Ibrahim coming back into this offense. You got Trey Potts, you got Bryce Williams, you got a group of guys that are at running back that maybe they're not going to rely on. You don't have the O-line, you don't have the running game. And Ethan Kaliak-Man has looked pretty good throwing the ball in the air. So I think Minnesota's going to throw it a lot more. Ethan's not what Tanner is, and the offensive, we'll see what the offensive coordinators are going to do. I think there's just some uncertainty there with what Minnesota has right now, and that's why I think Wisconsin's going to be a notch above them in the passing game. Let's talk about Nebraska. Okay, because if you look at just the guys from last year's team that they have coming back and that are slated to come back, guys like Marcus Washington, Xavier Betts, Isaiah Garcia-Castaneda, and Alante Brown, that right there is a good core. Then you go into their transfer. Josh Fleeks from Baylor should be a solid guy. But then you look at Billy Kemp, 2020 and 2021 had really good years. Season cut a little bit short in 2022. Now, that's good talent on the perimeter for Nebraska. But if you listen to Marcus Satterfield and his introductory press conference as the offensive coordinator of the Huskers, he's talking about huddles, he's talking about fullbacks, he's talking about tight ends. Matt Rule wants to be physical, he wants to run the football. Okay? So once again, I see talent in this wide receiving room. I just don't see the production that I see is going to be put up at Wisconsin. Because I think this is a Nebraska team that's going to want to run the football. Like Anthony Grant and A.J. Allen in that running back room, I think is going to be a really good running back tandem. Maybe if Jeff Sims is in there, there's a little bit more quarterback run as well. I see talent. It's just not as deep. I don't think it's as good as Wisconsin, and the scheme and philosophy just isn't there as well. Illinois, okay, you got Isaiah Williams, you got Casey Washington, you got Pat Bryant. After that, it dips off quite a bit. Although this wide receiving core is good, they just don't have the depth, I don't think, at Wisconsin. Now, you bring in Luke Altmaier, and remember last year, Chase Brown masked a lot of those offensive line issues. O-line, especially pass protection, is a concern, and that's why I'm not really game on Illinois competing with the likes of Wisconsin. And I'm going to wrap things up with the comparisons, at least with Michigan. Right, you get Cornelius Johnson back, you get Roman Wilson, you got A.J. Henning. Andrell Anthony is a big loss. Like, if I had Andrell Anthony in this Michigan wide receiving core, I think it might be a decent competition with Wisconsin. But that's going to be a bigger loss than I think people realize. I think he's going to have a really good year transferring to Oklahoma. If Andrell Anthony was in this receiving core, he'd be one of the top targets on this Michigan team. But we talked about the second best running back tandem at Penn State. Michigan will have the best running back tandem. Like, you look at Blake Corum, you look at Donovan Edwards. Look what happened through the first 7, 8, 9 games this season. J.J. McCarthy barely needed to do anything. This is a team that wants to run the football. The production just isn't going to be there in the passing game. Those are the offenses. Those are the passing games that I think are going to be right there that could challenge Wisconsin. But once again, it's because of what you have at quarterback. It's because of what you have at offensive coordinator. They're going to take full responsibility. They're going to take all of the talent they have there, and they're going to take it up a level. They're going to take it up 2 levels. This is a wide receiving core at Wisconsin that's going to put up some big-time numbers. I want to hear what you guys think. Do you think Wisconsin will be the very best wide receiving core in the Big Ten? Will they be number 1? You think they could compete with Ohio State? Will they be number 2 as I had them? Or where do you have them stacked up in terms of wide receiver talent in the Big Ten Conference? I want to hear your thoughts. Comment below. Also, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'm Big Ten Ted. We will see you in the next one.